So, I want to do a quick review today on a book I recently finished. That book would be The Diviners by Libba Bray. I was originally drawn to this book because I was head over heels in love with this cover. I can't even tell you how much I love this cover. Tell me this is not just an absolutely gorgeous cover. Even the actual hardcover, it's so pretty. So when I bought this book, the only things I knew about it were I loved the cover and it was set in the 1920s. That's really all it took for me, so it was kind of a gamble. This was a bet that I won because I ended up loving this book. To give you a quick synopsis of what this book is about, it centers around Evie, who goes to New York to live with her uncle. Her uncle is the curator of this museum that is nicknamed the Museum of the Creepy Crawlies. So it basically centers around rituals, the occult, that type of thing. Now Evie has this gift. When she touches an object that's close to somebody, she can actually see their memories, their deepest, darkest secrets from touching these objects. So meanwhile in New York there's a series of serial killings going on. They're ritualistic, they're occult-like, and they're very mutilated. It's very graphic. So the police enlist Evie's uncle to help them figure out who's behind these murders. The Diviners, I believe, is the first book of a 4-part series. I loved this book. I don't really know what I was expecting from it, but the whole paranormal crime mystery novel set in the 1920s, the mood, the writing, it was just amazing. It was so good. Now, I am not the type of person to just go ahead and give a book 5 stars unless I really, really loved the book. This book I gave 5 stars because I have no complaints. I really don't. Once in a while I will get caught up in sort of the magic of a newly finished book and I will give a book 5 stars prematurely. Then after a week I'll go back and go, do I really think it deserves 5 stars? And I'll change it to a more appropriate rating. This book is still 5 stars for me. This book is close to 600 pages, so it's not a particularly quick read. It's not super long, but you're not going to run through it really fast. Or at least I didn't. Maybe you're a faster reader than me. The imagery in this book was so good. There were parts that just really creeped me out. Libba Bray clearly did her research on this book. It's hard for me to believe that somebody in the 21st century managed to write such a convincing novel set in the 20s. She did an amazing job. One thing I really liked about this book is that even though there is a bit of a love triangle in it, it's so understated and it takes such a long time to develop. This is what I feel like a love triangle should be like. Most of the time in love triangles I can kind of figure out who the favored guy is. If you take Twilight for example, whether you were Team Edward or Team Jacob, we all knew she was going to end up with Edward. You knew it. You knew it. Like, there was no competition there reading it. You knew that that's just how it was going to end up. Edward was clearly Bella's favorite, and clearly the author's favorite. In this book, I have no idea who she's going to pick. No clue. I don't even know who I want her to pick, honestly. Usually I have a straight up favorite. I don't. Originally, I was a big fan of Sam Lloyd. But as I got further into the story and I started seeing other sides of Jericho, Jericho really started to grow on me, and I don't know who she should pick. I don't know who I would pick if I was in her position because they're both so different. I don't know. I love how it's not the main point of the story. I love how there is this main purpose and goal that's not romantically related. However, you do sort of have these romances brewing in the background. It's very subtle, it's very well developed. It's still developing. End of the book, it's still developing. There is going to be 4 books in the series. There is plenty of time to develop it, and she is taking the time to do that so it's done properly. And I can't tell you how much I love that about it. I normally get very sick of the average love triangle, so the fact that she's taken the time to do one right since she chose to include one, I really respect that. I also want to talk about Evie a little bit. I love Evie. She's definitely not your typical YA archetype heroine. Evie has a kind heart, but she's very selfish, she's very self-involved. She's a wild party girl who constantly needs to be the center of attention. I feel like we all know somebody like Evie. somebody who you want to be friends with, but she can be a little hard to handle at times. Evie's a flawed character, but you can't help but root for her and like her at the same time. I love that, I really do. She is a very realistic character to me. Evie, I feel, is a person I can meet in everyday life. Except for the fact that she's in the 1920s. She talks like she's in the 1920s, she dresses like she's in the 1920s. But as far as her personality goes, I could definitely meet a girl like Evie. I guarantee you I've probably met them. To me, John Hobbs was such a good villain. He was so dark and creepy, and he was so much fun to read about. I don't know if there were any characters that I particularly disliked. Maybe the reporter. Yeah, definitely the reporter. Other than him, I really love the characters. In the next part of the video, I'm going to get into more of the spoilers of the book, so if you have not read it yet, I recommend stopping here and coming and rewatching this part of the video once you've read it. So the parts where Evie was inside Knowles End, I was on my seat. I was so creeped out. I was so worried about what was going to happen next. I couldn't put the book down. I don't know how you guys felt about that, especially the scene with Jericho. I love how Evie ended up being the target for the final sacrifice. I only started to figure it out after Mary White ended up not being the final sacrifice. That's when I started to put the pieces together, although I do feel like I should have figured it out way before then, but I didn't. But I loved it, and I thought it was an interesting way to bring everything together, and I am so excited for the second book. I'm so excited. Like, if this was just the first book and there's supposed to be way more big bads to come, I cannot wait. I loved reading and finding out the background story to everything. I loved reading about Ida Knowles at Knowles End and how she came to meet Mary White and John Hobbs. And what about that song that John Hobbs sings? Naughty John does his work with his apron on. So go out, read this book. I promise you will love it. I loved it. Go read it. Go read it. So, that is all for this video. I will get another one up soon, and I will talk to you guys later.